the Nazis came into different towns, so they needed someone to translate between them and the townspeople. Being that he knew Czechoslovakian as well as German, he was chosen as a translator. For example, when they would walk into a house, they would tell him to translate to the townspeople, "We need this house and you get out." So he would translate it into different things such as polish my shoes a deeper, and it created a lot of confusion this way. When my mother asked him, "Zaidi, you weren't afraid the Nazis were going to kill you?" He answered, "Mir darf nicht haben mehr von keinem, nor von der Rebbeinu Shalom," which means we shouldn't be afraid of anyone besides for the Rebbeinu Shalom. That Hashem is the only power we should be afraid of. When he emigrated to America after the war, he became a leading manufacturer in plastics. During that time, he contracted a garbage company to pick up all his garbage from his plant and take it away. During that time, most of the garbage companies were mafia run. So one day he gets a knock on his office door, and an Italian fellow walks into his office. So my grandfather asks him, "What do you want?" So he tells him, "We're taking over this account and we're taking your garbage from now on." My grandfather asks him, "What do you mean?" "I want my old guy." He says, "Well, your other guy, he's gone, he's not around anymore, so we're just going to be taking care of this from now on." So my grandfather said, "No, I want my old garbage man back." He was very loyal to anyone who had ever worked for him. So this mafioso tells him, "No one says no to me. You know who I am?" My grandfather tells him, "You know who I am? I survived the concentration camps. I survived the Nazis. I'm not afraid of anyone. Get out." And he kicked the mafioso straight out of his office. And the next day, he had his old garbage man back. The pasuk in Parshas Chanon, Paradal, pasuk Lam Beis says, "Ki Hashem hu Elokim hashemayim al ba'al haaretz mitachas einai." Hashem is the only power. Hashem is the only power you should be afraid of. There's a Gemara, famous Gemara, Mesivta Chulin of Zayin and Beis, that says that there's a Maisa. There was a woman that was called Mahadra L'Mishgal Aframi Tuskar Reb Chanina. She wanted to take the dust from under Reb Chanina's feet to do different sorts of kishuf with it. So Amallah, he told her, "Shikaili Lamis Taya Milsech Ina Milvadik." He told her, "Take it, but it's not going to help you anyways because it says in Torah Ina Milvadik." So Frak the Gemara Va'amr B'Yechanan Lama Nikra Shman Kishafim Shemachishim Pamayu Shalmalam. That the reason why it's called kishuf is because it contradicts Kiviyachol, the family of Shemayim. So like the Gemara, no, he was able to say that the reason why he knew that it wouldn't work was like the Gemara, Shani Reb Chanina enough zechusei. He had a lot of zechusim. So Reb Chaim Volozhin says that the var wasn't that he knew he was a great Talmid Chacham, he was a big tzaddik, and Mela, the Kayach HaToma wouldn't be able to work over him. Rather, he knew that there was Eino Yilvade, Ulchein, sagt the Rav Shachan, Ulchein, Gar Reb Chanina, Lo Yishabata Achal Zechus Kedushas Karasim Meiso Hamarubim. It wasn't because he knew that he was a great tzaddik. Rak Shiyada B'Shir B'Nafshay Shazayis Hamunah K'lu B'Livay. Rather, he knew in himself that this was the Amunah that was kaveh in his heart. She'ein Oy Milvadi Yisrachim Kayach K'la. That there's no other power in the world except for Hashem. So Mela, since he knew that he kept on thinking Eino Milvadi, the Kayach HaToma wouldn't be able to overcome this Kayach, his Kayach HaTayra. So, and he continues saying, this is why it's called Eino Milvadi. So, Mela, from this we see that whenever anyone thinks Eino Milvadi, you think Eino Milvadi, no one can touch you, nothing can happen to you. You're untouchable by all the Kaychas HaToma in the Welt. So, Mela, not only is Amunah Gematria, the first two names are a dear public speaking teacher, Rabbi Rubenstein, it's also Gematria B'Tachlein Hashem. If you have Bitachon in Hashem, and you think Eino Milvadi will be Zeicha to be Mashiach's kingdom here, and we know Amen.
Representing Yeshiva Far Rockaway, Rosh Yeshivas Chashuv Rabbanim. Rabbi Nachman Mendel, a beloved Rebbe in Far Rockaway and in Los Angeles for the last 26 years of his life, came to the principal of his yeshiva to discuss with him a boy who was having trouble with his learning. He told the principal that in the past, when he had a boy that wasn't successful, he would recite the entire Sefer Tehillim. In this boy's case, he recited Tehillim 3 whole times, and yet still there was no change. With tears in his eyes, he asked the principal for advice. The principal said he would look into it and get back to him. And a week later, he returned with a startling discovery. The boy was in fact not Jewish. Tefillah has a tremendous power to influence a person, even in Russia, to do tshuva. And we find this concept in Chazal too. The Gemara in Tainus, Daf Chav Gimel and Beis, tells the story of Abba Chelkia and his wife, who stood on opposite sides of the roof to daven for rain. Their tefillahs were answered, but the clouds first appeared on the side of the roof of his wife, a sign that her tefillahs were answered first. Abba Chelkia explained that one time there were Chayim in their town, and he davened for them to die. His wife, on the other hand, davened that they should do teshuvah. It was in this zechus that her tefillahs were answered first. We see the amazing power that tefillah has to influence others. Now the problem is, asked the Maharsha in Brachos, we know that there is a rule of a kol b'dei shamayim, chutz me'ir shamayim, which means that Hashem controls every aspect of a person's life, except for their own yiras Hashem, something which a person must take into their own hands. Now if so, how can someone daven for another to do teshuvah? How can someone change another's level of yiras Hashem? Isn't that something which a person must do on their own? Now says the Chazon Ish something astounding. If someone causes someone else to serve Hashem, even if it's by force, Hashem considers it as if that person chose to do teshuvah. How can this be? He says that when it comes to yiras Hashem, Klal Yisrael is regarded as one person, as one collective intelligence, so to speak. So when one person does an action, it doesn't matter whose bechira it was behind the action, as long as one person had bechira. And this answers the question of the Maharsha. The same way that forcing someone to serve Hashem is considered as if they did it with bechira, so too, when one davens for another, it is considered as if that person himself chose to come closer to Hashem. Now, however, this still seems to be a stira to the concept of bechira. We know that bechira literally means the ability to choose, or the ability to take our own path in life. So, if a person wants to be a Rasha, what gives me the power to decide his fate? Why should anyone be able to change someone else's yiras Hashem? And now the answer lies in the seemingly simple sentence of Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh B'Zeh. We are all guarantors for one another. When it says we're guarantors for one another, it didn't just mean that now I'm responsible for another's actions. It meant that we're literally one person, and everything one does can affect the entire Klal Yisrael. And this is illustrated by the famous Medrash, which says that one person doing an Aveira is like someone drilling a hole on the bottom of a boat. It doesn't matter who owns the cabin that he's drilling the hole in, or if he's only drilling in his own section. If his part of the boat sinks, then so does everyone else's. Now, if this is so, then of course davening for another doesn't affect their bechira. All we are doing is davening for our own yiras Hashem, for our own relationship with Hashem, and through that tefillah, all of Klal Yisrael is uplifted, even the Rishayim. Everyone has heard the names of Or Sameach, of Esha Torah, and for girls, Neve Yerushalayim. These wonderful institutions have helped thousands of Jews return to Torah. Now, but really, we see from here a powerful lesson. It may just be that the most effective way to do Kiruv Rechaikim can be simply to daven for another Jew.
My name is and I'm representing the Shaarei Yeshivas. Every Shabbat in the synagogue, we take out the Torah from the Ark and read a special portion from the Torah. In one particular synagogue, there were two people who would read the portion of Torah on Shabbat, Aaron and David. Aaron and David would rotate reading the Torah every week. One week Aaron, the next week David, so on and so forth. One Friday afternoon, close to Shabbat, it was Aaron's week to read from the Torah. As Aaron was practicing the reading, he realized that he had a very sore throat, which would most definitely disturb his reading of the Torah. So Aaron called his good friend David and told him, David, I know that this week is really supposed to be my week to read from the Torah, and your week is next week. But as I was practicing, I found that I had a sore throat, and it's probably going to disturb my reading of the Torah. Do you mind filling in for me this week and reading the Torah instead of me? David then responds, no problem, and proceeds to practice reading that week's portion. The next day on Shabbat, right before David was about to begin to read from the Torah, he gets a tap on the shoulder. He turns around and sees Aaron there. Aaron then whispers to David, I'll read, I'll be fine, it's okay. Aaron then proceeds to the best of his ability to read from the Torah. But obviously to the rest of the congregation, his sore throat was quite problematic. At the end of his first segment of the Torah portion, he quickly motioned to David to take over, and then David proceeded to read the rest of the Torah reading. After the prayer service was complete, David ran over to Aaron and asked him, Aaron, I thought you told me that you weren't going to be able to read from the Torah this week, and told me to fill in for you. So why did you come and attempt to read from the Torah instead of me? So Aaron then turned to David and answered him, David, you and I both know good and well that really this week I was supposed to read from the Torah, and all you were doing was filling in for me. But who knows if the congregants will know that? When they see you go up, and maybe since you didn't have as much time to prepare the Torah reading, it wouldn't come out as smoothly, and they would think they're not as professional as you really are. So therefore, I first came and attempted to read, and once they saw that all that you were doing was just filling in for me, they would know in case you made a mistake that you weren't the scheduled speaker. We see in this story such a concept in Judaism that how not to embarrass someone else at all costs. Here's another story to illustrate this concept. In the early 1800s, there was a great rabbi, one of the greatest scholars and Jewish leaders of his time, named Rabbi Akiva Eger from the city of Posen. One year, this great rabbi was having his Passover meal in his house, with a table set with crystal glasses, delicate china, and a sweeping, sparkling white tablecloth, and everyone dressed in their finest. It was a real festive atmosphere. There were over 20 guests joining the rabbi by his Passover meals. Over the course of the meal, one of the guests, by accident, knocked over his glass of wine all over the sparkling white tablecloth. Quickly realizing the embarrassment this guest might be feeling, the great rabbi then proceeded to knock over his own glass of wine, and then announced casually to the crowd, "Oh, it must be a rickety table. It's okay." Thus, to prevent the guest from any embarrassment. We see once again from this story how the great Rabbi Akiva Eger went out of his way not to cause his fellow any embarrassment. Now, this concept in Judaism, of protecting others from embarrassment in all situations, has a source in the Torah. In Genesis chapter 38, we find the account of a woman, Tamar, who was falsely accused by her father-in-law Judah of committing adultery. Judah was unaware that he was the father of the twins that she was carrying. Although she could be executed for this, she still refused to reveal the truth and cause her father-in-law Judah any embarrassment. We see from this how in Judaism, our job is to prevent others from embarrassment, to not even slightly allow someone to feel embarrassed at all. Thank you.
Hi, my name is David Gans. I'll be representing Far Rockaway. We all know that 6 million Jews were killed during the Holocaust. However, what is a less known story is a story that takes place in the capital of a small country just north of Germany, Copenhagen, Denmark. At the time, the king of Denmark, Christian X, was known to be sympathetic towards the Jewish people. It is said that the king even wore a yellow Star of David, a symbol the Jews were forced to wear. On Erev Rosh Hashanah, 1943, when the Germans started to round up the Jews, the Danes came up with a daring idea. Despite it being Rosh Hashanah that night, they told the Jews not to show up to shul. And they told them, drop everything going on, and you gotta flee for your lives. The Danes then smuggled the Jews to their own seaside homes, and from there to be eventually ferried on fishermen's boats to Sweden, which at the time was a safe and neutral country. While some may know this part of the story, few know another amazing detail. On that Rosh Hashanah night, my grandparents' table was set with a long white tablecloth, silver cutlery, and fine dishes spread throughout the table, including at the center a crystal jar. And all of this for a meal that would never be eaten. My great-grandparents, all of a sudden, were among the lucky ones that reached Sweden, and they lived there for 3 years during the war. It was not an easy journey. They had to smuggle 15 to 20 people on fishermen's boats. Oh, right, okay. Sorry. This year, my family made a trip to Denmark, and we toured the exact boats that the Danes used to rescue the Jews. To me, it didn't look possible to be able to fit 15 to 20 Jews in such a small space. In addition, they told us that the Jews had to make sure their babies made no noise in fear of the Germans. Even furthermore, some of the Jews were covered in fish because they were scared that the Germans patrolling would stop the boat and make a search. However, over a span of 2 weeks, 7,000 of the 8,000 Jews living in Denmark were safe in Sweden. After the war ended, and after much hardship, the Jews returned home. Upon returning to their house, they realized that the table that they had set before Rosh Hashanah had not been touched. The silver, the dishes, and even the crystal jar remained just as they had left it. All right, hold up. This is the crystal jar. The same table, chairs, and all the stuff in the house can now be found at my grandparents' house at 128 Richmond Place in Lawrence. Our family had it shipped here years ago. At the offer of my father, the Buffum came over for dessert and were singing and baking, when all of a sudden, the table broke in the middle. My grandparents had it fixed and added additional support to the table. The table that the Germans couldn't break with all their power was ultimately broken by a few Buffums singing Zmiros, singing songs to Hashem, and continues to be used by our family until this day. The following day, by the Ufruf of my father, Rabbi Yaakov Reisman told over this story to his congregation. Astonishingly, throughout the entire Holocaust, only 51 Jews living in Denmark were killed. In the Agadah in Visha Amda, we say, Shaloi echad bilvad, aimdim aleinu l'chal eseinu, el shabachol dar b'dar aimdim aleinu l'chal eseinu. Not only one nation tried to destroy us, rather, generation after generation, there are nations that stand up and try to end the Jewish people. Echad, one, refers to Hashem. And while it's true that there are going to be nations that come after us, it's not the Echad. Shaloi Echad. Hashem, who is the Echad, wants us to still exist. And that's what keeps us going from generation to generation. Hashem was showing us this exact lesson. By leaving everything untouched, He showed us that there will always be evil people trying to ruin, trying to destroy, and trying to end the Jewish nation. But as long as we are one with Hashem, He will always watch over us. Thank you.
My name is Shaarei, representing the Mesivta Shaarei Chayim. Today, I would like to discuss the recent trend in our society known as veganism from a Torah perspective. Veganism, as we know, is the refraining of using any animal products, such as animal skin or leather, in particular, to not consume meat. So, to start, let's examine why a person would want to become a vegan. So, the Vegan Society, on the homepage of their website, features an essay on this topic. The first paragraph is titled, For the Animals. It reads as follows. Preventing the exploitation of animals is not the only reason for becoming vegan, but for many, it remains the key factor in their decision to go vegan and stay vegan. Having emotional attachments with animals may form part of that reason, while many believe that all sentient creatures have a right to life and freedom. Now, let's examine that from a Torah perspective. The Torah does say that humans may eat meat, as we see in Deuteronomy 12:20, when God will broaden your boundaries and you will say, I will eat meat. It is clear that this is not in accordance with the Torah, that one should feel that eating meat is forbidden. The paragraph continues. Specifics aside, avoiding animal products is one of the most obvious ways you can take a stand against animal cruelty and animal exploitation everywhere. Now, animal cruelty is this animal cruelty to consume meat of animals? We know that the Torah, as we see, the Talmud says that painting animals is forbidden from the Torah, bringing a verse from Exodus that forbids overloading a donkey. We see that the Torah is extremely concerned about painting animals, but however, the Torah does permit us to do shechita, ritual slaughter, in order to consume their meat. And in fact, they say that the shechita, the ritual slaughter, is in fact a painless procedure for the animal. I heard a story from a rabbi. A rabbi student was once walking in a park in London. Someone ran past and bumped into him. The man continued walking, and the next person he passed by looked at him in horror. He had in fact been slashed across the side of his neck, requiring over 300 stitches. He afterwards reported having felt no more pain than if someone had merely bumped into him. This knife that was used, the knife that was used to slash this person was obviously a lot less sharp than the extremely sharp knives that are used by the shoftim in the ritual slaughters. In addition, one rabbi in his PhD thesis was decided to refute the claims of the Swiss government. The Swiss government made an outlawed shechita, the ritual slaughter. One of the reasons for that was because it was cruelty to animals. One of the things that he did in the research for his essay was he interviewed people who had attempted to commit suicide by cutting themselves with a knife. And all the people that he spoke to reported that they felt no pain. And these knives, once again, are obviously a lot less sharp than the knives used by the shoftim, the ritual slaughters. Clearly we see that the shechita, the ritual slaughter, is not a painful procedure and is very far from cruelty to animals. Let's return to the vegan society. The second paragraph is titled, For Your Health. Well-planned vegan diets follow healthy eating guidelines and contain all the nutrients that our bodies need. Both the British Dietetic Association and the American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics recognize that they are suitable for every age and stage of life. Some research has linked vegan diets with lower blood pressure and cholesterol, as well as other health benefits. Well, the Torah is extremely concerned that one should guard one's health. But however, to go very far to not consume meat because of the possible risk of blood pressure and cholesterol, that's a very far extreme. And Rambam, also known as Maimonides, in his magnum opus, V'yah HaChazaka, states that extremes are not a good thing. To quote, the correct path is the middle measure in every area. That is the ideal which is equidistant to both extremes, not close to this one, nor to that one. Meaning, if there's an area that one is trying to improve, for example, over here we have the area of health. There's two extremes. There's the extreme of completely overindulging, eating whatever, wherever, whenever one wants. And there's the other extreme of going only to the bare necessities, eating almost nothing. The Rambam says you should not go to either extreme. Rather, you should take the middle path. You see that veganism, which is to completely refrain from eating meat, is an unnecessary extreme and is not a good thing.
Migration has been a controversy within the U.S. political debates for decades. Congress has been unable to reach an agreement on comprehensive immigration reform for years. President Trump was elected on pledges to curb illegal immigration and prevent terrorism, including plans to expand the border wall with Mexico. In office, he has scaled back his plans in some areas, but pushed ahead with full force in others, often drawing legal challenges and public protest. There are many people who support either side of the argument, whether or not we should have open borders and allow illegal aliens into our country. There are many reasons to claim why we should have open borders. America's historical openness to immigration has enriched its culture, expanded economic opportunity, and enhanced its influence in the world. Immigrants complement native-born workers and raise general productivity through innovation and entrepreneurship. Immigrants can integrate successfully into American society. America is a nation of immigrants. That is not a cliche, but a simple fact. Almost all Americans today either immigrated themselves or were descended from immigrants. If not for our grandparents immigrating from Europe and Poland, then we would not be here today. Open borders advocates argue it is a common myth that America is being flooded by mass immigration. The reality is the rate of net migration to the United States today is far below what it has been in previous historical periods. The United States accepts about 1.1 million permanent legal immigrants per year, which is a high number in nominal terms, but is historically modest as a share of the US population. On the flip side, in the United States of America, opponents of immigration typically focus on what they perceive as adverse effects, such as economic costs, negative environmental impacts from accelerated population growth, increased crime rates, and in the long run, changes in traditional identities and values. Transnational criminal gangs pose an immediate, clear, and present danger to the security of the homeland and its communities. Gangs are involved in a myriad of criminal activity, including murder, extortion, narcotics and weapons trafficking, human smuggling, and other crimes with a nexus to the border. Not that far away from where we are right now is home to one of the most notorious gangs in the country, MS-13. MS-13 endangers the safety and security of communities in the United States through violence and intimidation. Gang members routinely brutally assault and behead their victims to instill fear and to compel compliance. In 2018, Homeland Security personnel arrested 959 MS-13 members and associates. They then removed nearly 6,000 gang members, including 1,332 MS-13 members, which is a 24% increase from the year 2017. Let's move on now to analyze the issue of immigration from a Torah perspective. What does Judaism say about immigration? Right now, there is an intense debate in the United States and all advanced countries regarding how much immigration to allow and what to do about those who are already living illegally in our country. While Jewish tradition certainly cannot give us a definitive answer to what the best approach is, it can help us clarify some of the values that are involved. The Torah emphasizes in many places a positive welcoming approach to the stranger or immigrant. Indeed, this attitude is described as one of the foremost lessons of our exile in Egypt. For instance, it is forbidden to take advantage of the alien's vulnerability. The Torah even relates specifically to a refugee, as it states, "Don't turn in a slave to his master when he flees. Let him dwell in the place he chooses, don't oppress him." Deuteronomy 23:16. Note also that the Torah condemns the nations of Ammon and Moab for failing to show compassion to the people of Israel when we were refugees. Some of the verses commanding compassion for a stranger refer to a convert, and others refer to a true foreigner. But the underlying ethical message is the same. Indeed, Rav Kook wrote that having strangers among us is an essential element of a Jewish settlement. On the other hand, anyone can understand the difference between being hospitable and being welcoming to refugees and creating a situation where our community is so overwhelmed that we ourselves become the refugees in the community. To the extent that the strangers are productive and law-abiding and do not present an excessive burden, we are encouraged to learn from our own experience in exile to welcome them and even aid them. If, however, we are in a situation where accepting strangers presents a palatable threat to existing residents, then limitations or even total prohibition can be justified. After an in-depth analysis of the topic, I personally think that the general feeling is that in the United States today, most communities are not facing any special danger from immigrants, and efforts should be made to accommodate reasonable numbers of them. Others may view current circumstances differently, but the underlying Jewish message is crystal clear. Hospitality is the best policy, unless there are pressing circumstances that make it impractical.
I am Abraham Perlstein from Mesivta, Shaarei. Unfortunately, America is going through a terrible measles outbreak. It's crawling across the country, affecting thousands of people across and their families. So just like any other problem or sickness, we have to find a medication, and we have to find a way to prevent it from going into us. Vaccines, studies say, give a person a 97% chance to be immune to the measles. But unfortunately, a quarter of Americans don't get vaccines. Some say because they believe that it causes autism. Others believe that their religion doesn't allow for them to get vaccines. Now, this phenomenon that vaccines are connected to autism started in the year 1998 by a doctor by the name of Dr. Andrew Wakefield. He did a study on the vaccines, and he wrote a report about his study. And he gave it to newspapers, and they published it, and it went all across America. In 1999, they did a test on 500 kids, and not one of them showed any connection between the vaccines and autism. In the year 2010, Dr. Andrew Wakefield was accused for falsifying medical information and was stripped of his medical license. And in 2012, listen to this, it's unbelievable. They did a test on 14,700,000 kids, and not one of them showed any connection between autism and vaccines. So it is so clear that if you're not going to give a vaccine to your kid, or you're not going to get a vaccine yourself because of autism, it is completely illogical to say such stuff. The problem that people say they don't get vaccines because of their religion. So I don't know what religion you guys are from, but as a proud Jew, our leading rabbinical authorities say that a Jew is supposed to get a vaccine. For example, Rabbi Yosef Shalom Eliashiv, who is not with us anymore, but he said that if you know what's good for you, everyone should get a vaccine. Rabbi Moshe Sternbach once told a leader of a school that you cannot accept a child who is not vaccinated. Rabbi Usher Weiss also one time told a parent that you could get a bunch of parents to make a gathering and protest that their school that they send their kids to should not accept kids who don't get vaccinated. So we see that there is no logical reason in the Torah or anywhere not to get a vaccine. But unfortunately, for so many people who are anti-vaxxers, we have to be the ones to stand up for our rights and show that vaccines are the proper way to deal with this situation. Thank you very much.
For Yeshiva Far Rockaway. Our esteemed guest, Rabbi Pesach Kron, recounts in his book the story of a student named Feivel in a yeshiva in Russia in the early 1900s called Slutsk. Being one of the star students in the yeshiva, Feivel was very early on engaged to one of the most prominent girls in the area. However, there was one student who was jealous of Feivel's success, and therefore spread untrue stories about Feivel, causing the other family to break the engagement. Although the stories were untrue, they had their desired effect, and left Feivel now no longer engaged. He continued his studies in yeshiva till World War I broke out, when he was drafted into the Russian army. After serving in the Russian army throughout World War I, he went and learned in the yeshiva in Slobodka under the auspices of Rav Nosson Tzvi Finkel. One day, he was approached by Rav Nosson Tzvi Finkel with a letter. In the letter, that student, who had spread slander about him in Slutsk, had asked him for his forgiveness. Feivel said that he is willing to forgive the student, as he had realized later on that really the girl was not meant for him. And if the other family had not broken the engagement, he himself would have likely broken it. After hearing such a magnanimous deed done by one of his students, Rabbi Nosson Tzvi Finkel turned to him and asked him for a blessing. What was so special about that deed that Rabbi Nosson Tzvi Finkel, a venerated rabbi, went and asked him for a blessing? The answer could be found in the Talmud, which states, Kol hamavir o midosav, anyone who is willing to forgive and forget and does not exact retribution for everything done to him, ma'avir mimenu kol pshav. Hashem removes from him all his sins. When a person is willing to forgive and forget, he becomes free of sin. Such a person has such an awesome power that his blessings carry such weight in heavenly court that even venerated rabbis will turn to him and ask him for a blessing. Of course, this is easier said than done. How do we bring ourselves to forgive those who have harmed us in these ways? How do we forgive those who have caused other people to break engagements? The answer can be found. The answer is given by Rabbi Dessler. He gives a parable with a rich business tycoon, who we will call Mr. Monopoly, and this poor fellow, Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones one day knocks on at the door of Mr. Monopoly and asks him for a handout. Mr. Monopoly, offended by the fact that Mr. Jones thought he could ask him for a handout, throws him out of the door, telling him, "Go get a job, I don't want to give you any money." Mr. Jones, dejected, starts getting angry at Mr. Monopoly. "Why did you throw me out like that? What did I do to deserve such harsh treatment?" How do they get over their differences? How do they reconcile? Rabbi Elio Dessler explains that they have to think what the other one is going through. As Mr. Jones gets thrown out of Mr. Monopoly's house, he must think to himself, Mr. Monopoly has worked day and night for the past 30 years. Why should he want to give any of his money to me? I haven't even lifted a finger for him. I just come knocking on his door. Although this viewpoint might not be correct, and really, Mr. Monopoly should be giving me some money, I understand what he's going through. Mr. Monopoly, on the other hand, should be thinking to himself, Mr. Jones must have tried so many jobs in his life, and none of them ever worked out. I could feel a little compassion for him, and maybe give him a slight handout to help him get back on his feet. With this, a person will be able to forgive anyone who harms him by thinking to himself, they really might have done me something wrong. However, I must realize what they are going through, what they are thinking, and with that, we will all be able to forgive others. And when we become forgiving, all our sins will be forgiven in heaven, and our blessings will be so powerful that even the venerated rabbis of society will be asking us for.
Now I introduce you to our two judges, Rabbi Greenblatt and Rabbi Klein, our Rabbonim, who of course, being Rabbonim, are used to public speaking. And they will have both made a list of the scores they gave for each of the participants. I have to tell you, superb, really, really very well done. But now we come to and certainly both yeshivas have been extremely proud of. The prize, we managed to get some sponsorship. The prize for the winning team is $200. So that's $50 for each of the Balkan whoever wins. You can buy some nice farm with that. For the team that didn't win, then I'm giving a copy of, said he modestly, one of my own books. But as they sell at $25, that's not so bad. Anyway, so basically, I'm now going over to our esteemed judges to find out what their Heshbon was.
So you just combine the scores into one.
Yeshiva, Rabbonim, teams, the scores are very close. Yeshiva, Shaarei and the combined scores was 64 points. Yeshiva Far Rockaway, 67.5. Very, very much. A camera for this exciting moment. Actually, maybe the judges can come here as well, because this is really the judges' decision. Nice to have the judges here. Hey, Mr. Cameraman. There you go. Okay, well done. Captain of Chayim, cameraman ready. Okay. Far Rockaway, team, please. Winning team.
Thank you very much for coming. Thanks for having me.